Hey everyone, I hope that you are doing well. I am going through all the different races and class combinations in the 4th edition Player's Handbook to try to see which ones make the most sense. And if you're trying to optimize a particular class, what race would you probably want to choose over some of the other races? We're kind of doing a ranking of each one so that we can see what makes the most sense for you. So almost in the home stretch, just got a couple more to go. Today we are going to talk about the Warlord, and we'll see which races make the most sense if you're trying to play an optimized Warlord. Before we get started, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments anything that you would like to see from the channel in the future, or if you've got any feedback on this particular video or other videos, love to hear that as well. If you're interested in other ways that you can support the work, check out the description where you could become a channel member and get early access to these videos, or you can join the Ko-fi membership and get access to our Discord server where we kind of expand on some of these conversations in real time and talk through some of the other options that are available and some of the things that people have had in their experiences. So let's dive into our Warlord and see what we are working with. So the Warlord has 3 key abilities: Strength, Intelligence, and Charisma. So we have to decide which one we want to do is the most important for this. And usually we get a couple options from that. And then the third one is only somewhat useful for it. So let's see what we're working with our Warlord. And I went through and was looking at what we have as far as our class features. Now, a Warlord is similar to a Cleric in that they're both leaders, and they're both the ones that are, and they're both the ones that are going to be trying to either heal or help the allies and do that sort of stuff. The Cleric is going to be one that's going to be doing more healing and is going to have some options about whether they're in melee or whether they're doing some more ranged stuff with their holy symbol. A Warlord is different. A Warlord is strictly melee. If you look at what they do, they are basically a melee attack character, and their stuff that they do is really about manipulating the battlefield, moving their allies, giving their allies extra attacks, things like that. And a Warlord is one that was really unique to 4th edition, so it's something that's special and takes advantage of a lot of the rules that you had in 4th edition. So with that said, when you look at the class features, there are 2 that come into play that actually do use these abilities. So the Inspiring Presence feature would use the Charisma modifier, and then the Tactical Presence feature would use the Intelligence modifier as your bonus. So that's something that you want to keep in mind as you're working through this, that, if you're going to go the Inspiring Presence route, that's going to lean into Charisma, and you're going to go Tactical Presence, that's going to use your Intelligence. Now, where do those come into play? Well, if you look at the encounter powers, you can see that some of them give a little something extra if you have the Inspiring Presence command as your commanding presence, and then other ones will use the Tactical Presence if that's the one that you've chosen for yourself. So you got to factor that in as you're building your character, that if you're going to go with the Tactical Presence, then not only do you need to make sure you've got a little something in Intelligence, but you're going to also want to maybe lean towards choosing those powers that are going to take advantage of that. Because if you choose like Leaf on the Wind instead, then you're not going to get anything special from that. And if you chose Tactical Presence and then you choose Guarding Attack, well, you're missing out, because that one works best when you're using the Inspiring Presence. So you got to think about all that sort of stuff. But just keep in mind that those will need more abilities to help you get the most out of those. So that's the only things from the class features directly that are going to use your ability scores. So you factor that in. But then if we take a look at the powers themselves, and you can see, so Inspiring Word is actually so twice per encounter, and the target spends a healing surge and then gains 1d6 extra hit points. So it doesn't actually use either of those abilities so you don't need to worry about it as far as your Inspiring Word. When you get to your at-wills, we've got, this one is going to be plus your Intelligence modifier for hit. This one is going to be Strength versus Fortitude, and then the damage is going to have Strength. This ally applies your Charisma modifier. So this one is using Strength and Charisma for both of those. Viper Strike is going to have Strength for the attack, Strength for the damage, and the effect does not use anything. Wolfpack Taxis is going to use Strength, and it's going to use Strength for the damage as well. We see strength and strength, but then we've got our charisma for our inspiring presence. Hammer and anvil is strength, and then the strength for the damage, but then also get to use the charisma. So you're really seeing a lot of these. So we got strength, intelligence, and charisma. And as you go through this, strength is clearly the biggest one. That one is going to come into play more than anything. but you are seeing a lot of powers that do use those other abilities, and it really comes down to which of these commanding presence did you choose. If you chose inspiring presence, then you're going to want to make sure that you are leaning into the powers that use the same ability score, and so you can get the most out of that. Now, it's perfectly fine if you want to try to kind of middle of the road intelligence and charisma to try to balance it, and then gives you more options about which of these that you select. But you might want to think about saying, hey, I can go all in on my strength, and then I can go and middle of the road my charisma and my intelligence, and then I got most options. Or I want to go all in on one or the other, and really, I'm more limited on what powers I can choose because of that, but I'm going to get the most from it as I can. The other thing that always has to come into play, though, is that you got to remember that as a melee character, you're going to need some armor class, and you're going to need some hit points, because if you're going to be up there in the fray using that melee weapon, you're going to need to make sure you have both of those things. And those are going to require constitution and dexterity. So they're not listed as part of the key abilities, but you got to be thinking about that for that type of character. You don't want to ignore it and then find out that I've got really great strength and I've got this great weapon and all these wonderful powers, and I go up there and I hit this enemy, and then as soon as they hit me, my armor class is nothing, so I take every single hit that they give me, and my hit points are nothing, so after 2 hits I'm suddenly laying on the ground. You got to factor that stuff in as well if you're trying to make the most of your character. So with that said, for our Warlord, I think, even though it says that strength, intelligence, charisma, I mean, obviously intelligence, charisma, you really could choose one or the other for which one you want to go. Strength, no question, is going to be your main one. And then you can choose intelligence or charisma as the secondary one, because pretty much everything that you've got here is going to use strength as your main attack and as your damage. So that's really what you're dealing with there. So let's take a look at the chart here. And let's go through and decide what makes the most sense. So we're looking at our Warlord: strength, intelligence, and charisma. So looking right off the bat, we've got our Dragonborn with strength. Dragonborn is the only one that gives us strength, so that's important. The other one that it gives us is charisma, which is great if we've chose the inspiring presence as our commanding presence, because we will get to take advantage of that bonus. We're not going to get anything for our constitution for that one. So that's, again, that's not going to help, which is why I am actually going to talk about our half elf down here. If you look at this, and I said, Constitution is not one of the key abilities, but when you really factor in that this Warlord is going to be somebody who has to be right up there in the fray, is going to be using that melee weapon and making those melee attacks, Constitution is going to directly tie to your hit points. And to me, that is going to make a lot of sense to have someone that is your having a high score that you could use for that sort of stuff. Now, the half elf does not give you strength, but you got to ask, what do you want? You can work through it and say, all right, I can get my strength from other sources. I can use the highest array. Just because the Dragonborn gives you the strength, is that really enough? Because I can just put the highest number of my array in there as well. But now I'm going to get that +2 to my constitution as well. So that's a tough choice that you got to make. And I think for the sake of the argument that, hey, you're going to get that +2 to your strength, I'm going to put the Dragonborn up at the top. But I actually want to put the half elf and the halfling right up there in the same breath. And maybe I'm going too far with it, but I feel like with the type of character that a Warlord is going to be, that having that constitution to give you your hit points, having that dexterity to give you your armor class and your reflex is really, really important. And then you're going to get your bonuses from your charisma, which is going to come into play from your for some of those powers. And so having that bonus can really be something important if you're choosing the right powers. Dragonborn, I'll put it at the top of the tier anyway. I'm still going to put all these three in that tier 1. Dragonborn will go at the top because you are going to get the strength, and you still get your charisma. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with your constitution and your dexterity to help with those things. But I actually am going to put all 3 of those together as my top tier. I think any one of those, you could make that work pretty well for you. And where's that leave the rest of us? Well, I think, so intelligence, charisma, this is really an either or choice. Remember, when you're choosing your commanding presence that you have, one of them's going to take advantage of your charisma. One of them is going to take advantage of your intelligence. So having intelligence and charisma at the same time is not as much of a value as it may seem on the surface, because you're not going to get the most out of that. So I will put, I'm gonna take the Eladrin. Look at that, we get to use the Eladrin again, and I'm gonna put the Tiefling up there as well, because they're gonna benefit you from those from your additional things. You're not going to get your strength that you really need to make those work. You're not going to get the constitution that I think is really important, even though it's not a key ability. But you will be able to get your intelligence bonus, which will help you with your, I think it was the tactical presence, and then the charisma, which will help you with the commanding presence. So whichever direction you're going to go there, I think the Eladrin and the Tiefling can help you. Don't get distracted by the fact that the Tiefling is going to give you both intelligence and charisma, because that's not going to help you as much as you might think, because you're mostly going to be choosing one or the other, and it's going to be unusual for you to get benefit from both of those. So that's our tier 2. Just to keep it interesting, I'll put the human down as a tier 3. You get to choose one. You could choose strength, and then make the best out of the rest of it. Probably a dwarf. You're going to get the constitution for the dwarf, but you don't get any other bonus. I'll put the elf down here as well in the same tier. So we'll only have 4 tiers for this one. So the dwarf and the elf, because you're not going to get you're going to get constitution, you're going to get dexterity depending on which one you choose, which will help with your hit points. It'll help you with your reflex and your armor class. But you're on your own as far as your strength and your intelligence and your charisma that you would need to really get the most out of those powers. But it's not like you're getting nothing. So I feel like in some ways, some of the other classes, when we've done the rankings, when we've gotten down to the bottom tier, it's been like, okay, you're not going to get anything out of this. I think, when we were talking about like the fighter or one of them where the Eladrin was at the bottom, and you're just not getting anything that's going to be valuable for that. But I feel like even if you're doing the dwarf and elf, because this is going to be a melee fighter, melee character, I should say, that you're going to have, having some constitution, having some dexterity can actually help you a little bit. You just may not have as much as what you need to really take advantage of your powers. But so I think that's what I'm looking at for our Warlord. We're talking a Dragonborn. Because you're going to get the strength, the Dragonborn probably does go right at the top of that list. But the half elf and the halfling, I still put up at the same tier, because even though it is just charisma as the extra, which really only comes into play in certain cases, you're going to get constitution and dexterity, and those can really come in handy for a melee character. And so I think they're up there as well. If you disagree, let me know down in the comments. That's where I'm going with it. So if you're building your Warlord, that's the tiers that I'm looking at for it. So, but let me know your thoughts. If you've got different opinions on where you think it should rank and which ones are best and what you've done on yours, love to hear from you down in the comments. If you really want to continue the discussion, if you want to be a Ko-fi member and join the Discord server, we usually have some conversations about it over there as well. So hope you found that helpful and interesting. And if you liked it, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the description for other ways that you can support the work. Until next time, take care.